Hello, my name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Worn and Wound, and welcome to a brand new episode of Time on Screen, the podcast where we talk about movies and watches and where those things intersect. I'm really happy to be joined today by Kat Shoulders, head of content at Worn and Wound. Kat, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm glad to be here and excited to talk about our movie today.
Yeah, we're talking about The Life of Chuck, which is a technically 2024 movie because it premiered during last year's fall festival run. But it was released in theaters here in the United States relatively recently, just earlier this summer. You and I are both big Mike Flanagan fans. He's the director of this film. I'm particularly a fan of Mike Flanagan's Stephen King adaptations, which this is an adaptation of a Stephen King novella from a few years back. And this movie's been on my radar for a while, and I saw it, and I liked it. And then you saw it, and you liked it. And then I saw it again, and I liked it even more.
Same.
And I think you had a similar arc there.
Yeah.
And it has an interesting kind of like time component too that fits in with this podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm also very excited to talk about it. It's a really cool film.
Yeah, I agree. And it's one that I think we can break down a lot too.
Yeah, no, for sure. Before we do that, let's do a quick wrist check because this is
still a
Worn
watch podcast
after all, sort of. What are you wearing today?
I am wearing my Manta Triumph today. This is a black dial Manta Triumph with the red lettering that they did. And this is actually one of one because
nice.
I'm glad and happy to say that I'm friends with Mike and Justin over there. And they really did me a solid when I bought this watch. I asked them to polish the bezel. So the bezel is usually brushed on the Triumph models. It's very sporty looking, and I wanted a more sort of dressy vibe to it, and they did that. And I don't think they do that for everyone. So very, very kind of them to do that for me. And I don't wear this watch enough. I need to wear it more. It's a great piece. It's like 38.5 millimeters. And it's just a nice, like, fun watch to wear.
Yeah, the Triumph is a good one. I like that. I like that watch. It's cool. I remember you mentioning once to me that you had that yours was a unique piece, like a custom piece. So that's cool. I like a watch that's like a little something rare, something special. It's nice.
It is a little rare.
Yeah.
What about you? What are you wearing?
I'm wearing my Archanaut Arc 2 Tiger Shark today. I'm putting the finishing touches on a piece for the website on this watch and my other Archanaut, kind of like a 2-year retrospective of like owning one Archanaut and then adding another one. It's a brand that like I've really come to really appreciate and enjoy. And I had some things to say about this this Tiger Shark version, which I picked up at the end of last year. I've been wearing that all week as I've been sort of like polishing up this piece, which will be, unless something terrible happens, it will be on the blog by the time this podcast airs, so we can put a link to it.
Very cool. Yeah, awesome.
All right, so Life of Chuck. Tell me just broadly, Kat, about your sort of like first impressions of Life of Chuck when you saw it. You did see it in the theater, and when it was in the theaters a while back.
Yeah, and that's something I guess I'll quickly mention is that it was kind of hard to find in theaters near me. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was technically a limited release, but the theaters that are near me are very like large sort of Regal theaters, and it wasn't playing. I had to like travel about an hour to find a theater that was playing it, and I only saw it a few weeks after it was released here. So just kind of harder to find. We were the only people also in the theater.
I also saw it. I think I was one of like 3 people in the theater. Before we go any further, maybe we should because this is kind of like an underseen movie. Like, how would you describe like, how would you summarize the plot of this movie? Yeah,
it's weird because it's like, I don't know what category it fits under. Some ways I want to say it's a drama, but then also it's sort of a mystery and
a musical.
And a musical. It's really strange. I don't know if it fits under a traditional category.
Yeah.
I wonder let me see what IMDb has that listed. Do they usually have?
They'll categorize it as something. It's really like, I guess it's. I mean, I think it's a character study, like in one sense. It's like it's about it's about this guy Chuck at 3 different stages of his life, but it's also like very much about his whole life.
Yeah.
And the story is told in an unusual way. And like, that's part of what the movie is about, I think, is like how the story is told. So
they have it listed as drama, fantasy, sci-fi.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. That all checks out. It's like I think it's probably like one of the more, probably like the most experimental film that Flanagan's made. Like, it's not really straightforward. I feel like I love Mike Flanagan's work. Most of his other movies and television shows are pretty straightforward. Like, they're, you know, in terms of like how the narrative is laid out. Yeah,
totally. And I think you know, we'll get into this later in the podcast too, but it's a step away from the Flanagan norm, which is typically horror as a sort of a storytelling point. But the tagline I'm seeing here for the movie is the mystery of a lifetime, and I guess that pretty much sums it up. Yeah. No,
I think that's right. I had a very similar, you know, kind
it's
of like
rated R. Yeah, that's weird.
Well, heavy themes.
F-bomb or something.
This isn't. Yeah. I don't know. This is like
seems weird. It's like, this feels like it should be a PG-13 movie.
The teenagers weren't exactly clamoring to see Life as Chuck when it was playing in the theaters.
Yeah, it just seems odd to have it be rated R, but maybe there's a couple extra F-bombs in there.
Yeah. I was very, very impressed when I went in with high expectations because I really enjoy Mike Flanagan's work, and I think my expectations were met. Like, I was very affected by the movie when I saw it in the theater, and I knew that I needed to see it a second and third several more times to kind of like fully wrap my head around it, because it is told in this like very unusual way, which is, you know, it's told in reverse chronological order. But even more than that, the first section of the movie, which we can talk about in more depth, is like, that is sci-fi, like fantasy land. And it sort of like reveals itself to be that over the course of the entire like run of it, which is just like it sort of like wrong foots you from the start. And like, I don't know if like I had maybe a little bit of a difficult time sort of like initially getting into the movie. Yeah. Because you're constantly wondering like, what is going on in this movie?
I agree. I actually didn't know much about it other than it was a Flanagan piece that was adapted from Stephen King, which, or, you know, automatically just made me want to watch it, just being a fan of both. But I hadn't really seen anything much more than a teaser trailer for it. And I knew it had Tom Hiddleston, who I'm a fan of, in it. And so I really went into it blind. And from what I had seen, it was very, I don't know, positive, joyful, I would say. Like the trailers and the you know, the posters of, you know, 39 years, Chuck, thanks Chuck, like all that stuff. I kind of had an idea in my head of what it was going to be about, a life of this man named Chuck. And then from the start, I remember looking over at my husband and being like, what is this? Because this is not what we imagined this movie to be. It was so dreadful. The first act, or first part of the movie, which is Act 3, it just was like, okay, this is very surprising. And we did not know where it was going at all.
Yeah. And that's something I chase in movies. Like, I love like, you know, going into a movie and not knowing exactly what's going to happen. So like, that's something that I really like. But I think like this movie, you know, you watched the trailer of course, you know, for a movie like this, and like it's pitched as this sort of like feel good, life affirming movie. Like, I think immediately a lot of people made comparisons to like Shawshank Redemption, which is another Stephen King piece that is like not horror, and has that sort of like that same sort of, you know, kind of like, you know, has a feel good ending, you know, not to spoil Shawshank Redemption. And also, like, just a blanket spoiler warning, by the way, for Life of Chuck, if you haven't seen it, because I think it's
stop
we kind of have
listen
to talk
no more.
Before we get into the structure, I just want to talk real quick about the way this movie rolled out last year on the festival circuit. So this was a relatively small budget movie, kind of like not as high a profile movie as Mike Flanagan's previous feature film, which was Dr. Sleep, which is a movie we talked about on the Shining podcast. Were you on that podcast with me?
I was. We did that one.
So we can come back to that, but like this was this is a much more kind of like, I think for him, it's like a much more personal sort of you know, endeavor on Flanagan's part. So it won the People's Choice Award at the Toronto Film Festival. Are you familiar with this award, Kat?
I'm not. No. I saw you made a note of that.
Yeah, so this is an award that it's given out every year at the Toronto Film Festival, and it's this like crazy good predictor of movies that will be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. You have to go back
Okay.
to 2011 to find a movie that won this award at the Toronto Film Festival that wasn't nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards.
Interesting. Wow.
They don't always win
but they're
Best
nominated.
Picture, but they're nominated. So just 2024, Life of Chuck won last year. American Fiction is a previous winner that was nominated for Best Picture. The Fabelmans, Belfast, Nomadland, Jojo Rabbit, Green Book, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, La La Land, Room. It just goes on. And like, not all these movies are movies that I'm like a huge fan of, but if you look at like the sort of like the runners up for this award, they're also like they tend to be nominated for Best Picture too. So it's just a really fascinating, Academy Awards predictor. I can't think of another festival award that's as accurate an Academy Awards predictor as this award. Like certainly like great. The Palme d'Or and at Cannes is not, and movies that win and other big festivals or get big awards at other big festivals do not have this level of like consistency. So I thought that was really interesting, and that kind of like got my attention last year when it won. And I thought, oh well, this movie didn't have distribution at that point. It could like get released at the end of 24 and maybe like slide in. That didn't happen. It was sort of like dumped on a weird sort of like off week in the summer of this year. Do you think this is going to get nominated for Best Picture?
I have a hard time seeing that.
Me too. Like I don't think it's a contender. Like I don't know like what the big contenders are at this point.
I feel like the movies that I don't know. There's even though I think Tom Hiddleston's character as Chuck in this movie is the main character, I don't think he has enough screen time to. I don't know. It feels a little bit off from like their more character driven movies that we typically see in the Oscars. But I mean, as much as I enjoy it, I just don't see it competing in those categories.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, anything's possible. You never know. Like, Neon, the distributor of this movie, could like, start a campaign like later in the year. It kind of depends on how other things like shake out in the.
I just feel like they didn't do a good job. A lot of people haven't heard about this movie still, and I feel like it's already lost whatever momentum it should have gotten. And this should have been a little bit more well known too, that it won this award. And I still feel like I'm talking about it with all of my friends, and they're like, "Oh, I hadn't even heard of it."
Yeah.
So it's not. I don't think it got the traction for it, but sad to see, because I think this would be a great contender in the Oscars. I think it's a little too late.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I do think, like, having seen the movie, I think it's fairly obvious like why it won that audience award, though, because like it is the kind of movie that like I can imagine seeing. I saw it in an empty theater. It sounds like you did too, but like I can imagine seeing this in like a full house, like at a film festival, like full of people who like really want to see, something interesting, something new.
I wish I had saw it with a room. I think there's a real experience to watching a movie in the theaters with the theater completely packed with people and the emotion that you're feeding off of others. And I kind of wish I had that experience. Sadly, we were the only people in there, which almost felt kind of scary watching this movie.
I think particularly, and this is a good transition to talking about, like, we can just kind of like go through the three acts of the movie and talk about the structure. It's a good, it's almost appropriate to kind of like feel alone in this first act, which is, act 3. It's told in reverse order, as you said. This is a very disconcerting sort of like, half an hour of filmmaking, I think. And this is sort of like Flanagan kind of like in his most horror like key. In this section. So basically what we have here is we have Chiwetel Ejiofor, who plays we see him as a teacher, in this, I guess how much is a small town, right? Like a little kind of like medium-sized city. And he's having all sorts of problems. And we realize like the whole world is having problems. And, as things kind of go on, we realize there's this like massive like ecological environmental disaster that's befallen the planet, and everyone just kind of expects the world is about to end, and people just kind of feel like they can't really do anything about that. It's like there's a sinkhole in the town, and the internet has stopped working, including Pornhub, which they're very disappointed about. So like it has this sort of like mordant sense of humor to it, but also like watching it, especially like sort of some of like the news clips that are sort of like interspersed, like it felt strangely like authentic. Like,
I know.
Like, like this feels like it could
fires and
earthquakes and other
tsunamis and it's kind of one thing after the other, and it does feel very real. It feels very scary, and I guess that is really what started me, thinking just like, oh, where's this movie going? Because I thought this was like a movie about Chuck's life, and now it's like this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
But it's really strange. I think Flanagan does a really good job of, because this is like all pretty horrific, and you're just like, oh, and I started to get the feeling of dread, and here we are in the theater by ourselves, and every scene was like leading more and more into, oh, this is the end, like it's happening very soon. And I think Flanagan does a good job of like bringing heart to those moments that do feel very scary. That's what he does really well, and through conversation and dialogue and monologues that kind of stand out in the movie. And there's a few of those in this first part, Act 3, that really stand out and kind of set the tone of what's going to happen, I think, even later in the movie too.
My favorite of those monologues is Chiwetel Ejiofor delivers this long speech over the phone to his ex-wife about Carl Sagan's cosmic calendar, which is this concept borrowed from Carl Sagan, of course, where he describes sort of like the history of the known universe as the equivalent of a 12-month calendar. And he just kind of, as he's delivering this monologue, and he describes these like markers in the history of the universe, and you finally get to like human history, and I forget exactly what the what the exact reference is, but it's like this incredibly short period of time on the last day of the year is the equivalent of like human history. Like, and he says that like everything everyone that you've ever known, everything that human beings have ever recorded kind of like boils down to the last 5 minutes or whatever it is, on the last day of the universe. And I just thought that was like a really like beautifully delivered monologue. It also like, I think that's the connection to time, I think, that, makes this movie a good time on screen movie. Were you familiar with that concept, the Carl Sagan cosmic calendar?
Very vaguely. Yeah. Like mentioned later in the film, with Chuck watching this on television as a kid, similar, and I haven't really rewatched it since, but I should now. This movie actually sparked me watching some old Carl Sagan videos on YouTube after I watched it. Yeah.
I mean, put Carl Sagan content in a movie, and I'm gonna like it immediately. We did Contact is another movie we did
I know, it's a favorite of ours,
which is big. What else stands out to you about this first
well, I think something that really foreshadows something big that happens later in the movie is we see Chiwetel's character look up at a staircase that leads to a room while he's talking on the phone during this monologue. And it stood out to me because he's just like kind of oddly looking at it, and it looks a little eerie. It's kind of shot from above. The director is definitely making note of this room, of this hallway. So I kind of clocked that like, that's weird. And that ends up being a big part of the story later on, which to me, I don't know how you felt, like that is the horror element of this movie. It's kind of overlooked and overshadowed by Chuck's life and this story and this beautiful life that he had, but there is kind of a horror aspect to this storyline, which is very Stephen King and very Mike Flanagan, and that is this room that we'll talk more about, I guess, here shortly.
Yeah, it's something that it comes into play like late in the film in like a direct way. There's a there is like a supernatural element. It kind of reminded me of another Flanagan movie, Gerald's Game. I don't know if you've seen that. So like there's sort of like a twist in that movie towards the end too. Yeah. That's like introduced, and it like really changes.
That one
like,
was pretty horrific.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a similar, it's a King device, and I think it's a Flanagan device at the same time. And I thought that was pretty effective. Yeah. So this section of the film, we learn gradually, is sort of like the imagination of Chuck this character who we haven't met yet on his deathbed, as he's dying. And we're introduced to Chuck first through these like signs and advertisements that Chiwetel Ejiofor and other characters in the movie see, that kind of, they look like they're congratulating Chuck, as he's retiring from some like desk job, and characters have conversations about like, who is Chuck? No one knows. Of course it's Tom Hiddleston, and at the very end of Act 3, we see his final moments, and it becomes, and then the final moments for the universe, and we understand, okay, like that's what this movie is. It's it's this person's life story from death backwards, basically.
You kind of understand. Well, actually, you know what? When I first watched it, I don't know if I understood that was like all in his head at first. I understood it later, a little, maybe more towards the end of Act 2. I kind of clicked for me, but I guess I still kind of question this third act that started the movie a little bit on that first watch. I was still a little bit confused because they do cut to Chuck in his hospital bed with clearly what it looks like his wife and his child with him at the end of Act 3. But I don't know if I quite made that connection just yet, that's what that was sort of all in his head.
Yeah. For me, the thing that registered for me was that there was like, we're working with like something that's real. Which is like Chuck on his deathbed. Like that's just like presented to us in a way that feels like reality. And then you have like the very, like unreality situation that, these other characters.
The power goes out and they suddenly see Chuck, these signages and all this sort of stuff happening out of the windows. That felt very like, oh, this is like not real.
Yeah.
It's not a real world.
Yeah. Particularly towards the end of that section where they're literally, looking at stars like disappear from the sky, as Chuck as the character is dying. And it has like, that's when there's also like I think a horror element, or, an element that's meant to kind of jar you, where like those signs become like a little more threatening. Maybe like they appear kind of like in windows, from like TV screens and things. And it's just it's all a little bit more menacing. And for me, there's like a dividing line between like one of these threads is happening in someone's head, it's a fantasy, and the other is real. So yeah, you're right, you don't know exactly what's going on, but like you can differentiate that, like there's like two planes here.
Exactly. We should mention too, I don't know if I didn't make a note of this, but the whole movie is narrated.
Oh yeah. By Ron Swanson himself.
By Ron Swanson. Yes.
What'd you think of the narration?
I liked it. I liked the narration, and I tell you why, because I am a huge Stephen King fan. A lot of his books have like an inner monologue, and I don't think that sometimes that translates well when you try to make a movie. So I felt like this was a good way to narrate things, and even though it seems kind of like, I mean, it's funny at times, it brings sort of this like lightheartedness to this very sort of scary world that we're seeing, especially in the first of the movie. I liked it. Yeah, I thought it was very fitting.
Yeah, no, I think it works. I think that narration's tricky. It's really easy for it to go wrong in a movie. I think sometimes a trap that directors and screenwriters fall into is just kind of like overdoing it with the narration and like explaining too much. And I think that you could even make a case that like too much is explained in this movie, but I think it's done in a way that kind of like it's like it guides the viewer like in good faith, I think. And it kind of like it helps to like to tell you as a viewer that like your suspicions are correct, like this is sort of like this is how things are unfolding. It gives you a little bit of a maybe like a little bit of a warning. I don't know, I found like a comfort in it. Like it's
I did too. Yeah, it definitely guides you in the right direction of where this movie is heading. And I kind of wondered after, like, how would I feel if Chuck was narrating it and it was from sort of his point of view. But I kind of I think I like that it's not. And I think that there's a lot we still don't know about Chuck, even when the movie's over. But I think that kind of plays to the movie and his life. And I don't know, I kind of like that we don't know everything about Chuck either.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, I think like part of what this movie is about is it's about kind of like looking at a life through like very specific moments in a life that are meaningful to a person. And that's reflected in that first section when you go back and rewatch it after you've met characters in Acts 2 and Acts 1 who are you see in Act 3, but you don't know yet.
Yeah.
Chuck kind of populates, that first section with people, from his, from his life. And it kind of like, it's about, what one person finds important in his life,
Yeah.
what's memorable to a person in their final moments. It's a pretty profound, idea. So
definitely.
all right. So the second section, I think, is the one that like the movie's kind of like sold on this.
Yeah, this dancing scene
on this act. So this is where we see most of Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
So right in the middle of the movie, we have this very kind of like straightforward scene of Tom Hiddleston kind of like walking through a city, and he encounters a busker, a drummer, and she's drumming, and Tom Hiddleston just starts dancing, and then a crowd forms, and another woman starts dancing with him. He brings her in, and like I think it's important. Like he invites her, to dance, and then they kind of like the dance sequence ends, and they all kind of like commiserate, and then you start to learn a little bit more about Chuck. I'm curious, like what you how'd you respond to this when you
I mean, initially I was like, oh, this is a very long dance scene.
It is. It's extended. It's like probably it's a good 10 minutes at least.
It's pretty long. Dancing. It's pretty long, start to finish. But we learn a lot of things about Chuck through this dance scene, and some of the things he says and some of the things he does in his dance. We learn later on he learned from his grandmother, and who's a very important person to him. And I think even though it is a little long, it does a lot. I think it does a lot for the story. And to me, at the start of this act, he is clearly kind of maybe coming home from work or getting off or something, and he looks tired, and we see that he's carrying what looks like, I think, a briefcase or something, and he's an accountant, and I think this is also being narrated that he has these things, and he just lives a very ordinary life, and he's just an ordinary guy, and I think it's very clear. But then he does this thing that's like kind of out of the ordinary, which is dancing in this it looks like a mall, kind of like an outside mall, just shops and restaurants and stuff, just bizarrely and very loudly dancing too. And then he brings in the girl, and they gather this huge crowd, and it's just you can tell that this is not normal for Chuck to do this. And I think what's important to me about this whole movie is that this life is like an ordinary person, and a lot of these movies, they tell these great stories, and these people have done these amazing things in their life and accomplished all these large goals. And like Chuck is just an accountant, and he's kind of had a rough life. Like he lost his parents very young, which we'll find out later. And then he loses his grandparents even very young too. And then just goes on to live an ordinary life of an accountant. He's done nothing special.
Yeah. And it's important that he's an accountant because his grandfather was an accountant. And there's this another, very important scene that we'll get to where, Chuck is kind of like battling with himself and with his grandfather about should he invest his life in math, or should he invest his life in
dancing?
And so you see him kind of miserable, kind of a little bit downtrodden as he's approaching this busker, and then something clicks and he starts dancing, and it's like the two sides of this person playing out in that one moment. So one question I had, I'm not sure if it's explicitly stated in the movie, but I'm curious to get your thoughts. We know Chuck dies of some sort of dread disease. We later learn specifically it's cancer. Does Chuck know that he has cancer in this moment as he's approaching the busker?
So I questioned that the first time I watched it, because I thought, oh, maybe he's doing this because he knows he's on limited time, which we do find out later he knows that. But I don't think in this moment he knows until we see him sort of take his glasses off. He's kind of got this head pain. And I think later maybe it's mentioned that that's the moment that kind of kickstarted him to go to the doctor, and like that was it. Like that was the first moment he felt something that was wrong. But I don't think when he started dancing, he necessarily knew something was going on with him.
I think that it's the narration explains at the end of this section that this is the moment in Chuck's life where in his darkest days, and he's wondering what the purpose of it all is for, and he's asking asking God, like, why does,
Yeah.
why do we even exist? And like this moment is the moment that kind of
Yeah.
like clarifies him, that it's the one that like kind of like makes life worth living,
Yeah.
to have this
Yeah.
like
These small little
spontaneous
things. Yeah.
kind of like, moment of like pure happiness.
Yeah.
I thought the dance scene was like really well done.
Yeah. Me too.
I think I don't know what kind of like dance training Tom Hiddleston has, but I think he certainly sort of like,
Yeah.
pulls it off in this movie. I can remember thinking, like, when I watched this movie the first time, I remember thinking like they're filming this like an old school musical,
Yeah.
like an old school movie musical with like, a shot that like perfectly frames
Yeah.
like the dancer from head to toe,
Hmm.
which I think is something that, like those classic musicals do really well, and like modern musicals don't
Yeah.
do as often. And we learn in the next section that like there's a real reason for that, because
Yeah.
we learn this character kind of like grew up specifically on movie musicals.
Yeah.
So the third section is really where we get like kind of like the most information about this character, from the earliest points of his life. And we learn, like you said, that his parents died in a car accident, and his unborn sister also died in that same accident. So very tragic, kind of like the beginning of his life. He lives with his grandparents, who are played by Mia Sara and Mark Hamill, which I think is incredible casting.
Yeah.
Mark Hamill gets to have a great a great Flanagan monologue towards the end. And I really love seeing Mia Sara in this movie.
I do too.
Mia Sara's,
she's one of my favorite characters.
yeah, she's the one of the stars of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She plays
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller's girlfriend,
Yeah.
which, a very important movie to me. Very like,
Yeah.
I was kind of like had a crush on Mia Sara for as long as I've
Yeah.
been watching movies. So like,
Yeah.
we're just great to see her turn up. She hasn't like worked a lot in the last like 30
Yeah.
years or so. If you look at her IMDb, like very, very spare filmography. So just really, really great to see her. And this is like the section where you get a sense of Chuck's home life, and sort of like what, it fills in some of the gaps in those other acts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is, I think, there's so much things that are important that happen in this last, or technically like the first act of the movie. And some of my favorite moments are from this part of the movie, and really meaningful monologues that happen through a lot of different people that affect Chuck in his life. And we really don't know a whole lot about Chuck's adult life, but we know a ton about his childhood through this act, and really just what sets him off for the rest of his life, and characters that we'll see that made an appearance in the third act in the beginning. And we sort of kind of can put those pieces together through his interactions with them.
Yeah. It really, it really does kind of like center around like those, like his exposure to dance. And that is not something that I expected, to be kind of like the focal point of this movie, like going in, but it's truly important. He's taught to dance by his grandmother, and a great montage to Dance Hall Days by Wang Chung, just a great song. And you see them dancing together, and her showing Chuck,
it's all the dance movies,
all the important, movie musicals, and you get a real sense of their bond.
Yeah.
And you get a sense that like he's kind of like on team grandma, and the grandfather is maybe like kind of like a little bit at odds, and he's portrayed as he's a drunk,
he's a drunk.
He's also just like, doesn't seem as happy. He's an accountant. He doesn't seem like, he makes a great defense for accounting, but he doesn't seem like particularly like thrilled with his station in life. And I think that like those little details, and then seeing Chuck kind of like excel in dance and in school as well, which is kind of like how this section closes, is it's just like very powerful, and like really this is incredibly well done.
And there's a scene, I think maybe towards the beginning of this act, that Chuck is in class with his teacher. Teacher has sort of yelling above all the students. It's kind of chaotic, and she is reading Whitman, and in this quote, it is what is it? I'm large, I contain multitudes. I think maybe I'm misquoting that. I'm sorry. But it's something along those lines.
Song of myself.
Yeah. And it is in that quote, and he's very curious, like, what does he mean by that? And she sort of grabs him by his head and like kind of tells him that all of his memories, all the people that he knows, and as he goes through life, his these multitudes in his head, these worlds are going to become larger and larger and larger. And that kind of sets the tone for the beginning of the movie. And all of these people he's come to know, he's created his own world in his head.
Yep. I think that you can like make a case that like that is what that third act is like, he's created that universe in his head. That's a great monologue. So that's Kate Siegel, Mike Flanagan's wife, who appears in many of his films and TV projects. Give me that monologue. That's a really wonderful moment. There's something about like a character, like a teacher or someone with like this like wisdom, imparting that wisdom onto a student or somebody younger. Yeah. Which is like, I always find that's a device that just always works for me in a movie.
Same.
And it's just a really, really great scene.
And he has another great interaction with his dancing coach later on too, that I really like. But yeah, there's all these just great characters that really help form who Chuck is. And he's such a curious kid. I have to say, just call out like the casting for this kid. I've never seen him in anything, but I thought he just did a great job. It's very easy to like annoy me with a child actor in a movie, especially nowadays. I feel like they either overact or they're annoying, but I quite like this kid, and I thought he did a really good job of acting in the film and not being annoying.
Yeah, no, the casting's really good from top to bottom. Like I feel like everyone kind of like has their moment, in this movie. Like people, you get those Flanagan monologues, like the right actors are given the monologues. Yeah. He has this like coterie of like familiar faces that he like works with over and over again. And it's just, it's a really, really well cast movie, but I had never seen this kid either. Yeah. I agree. I'm very easily annoyed by by kids in movies. Yeah. The other element of this section that kind of like hangs over everything is this idea of the house that they live in, and this this room in the attic. That's off
Cupola,
limits.
is that what they call it, or something like that?
Yeah. So it's a locked door. Yeah. Mark Hamill's grandfather character tells Chuck he's never to go in there. Yeah. There's, well, let me ask you this: did you have any like ideas of like what was in there before it's revealed what was in there?
I don't think I did. Yeah. No.
I didn't either. And I think that like when I watched the movie a second time, there were like little hints, and you can like, I feel like you can kind of like piece it together because of the deaths that are discussed. Yeah,
because he talks to him about it. I think one night watching television, he's sort of drinking too much and starts to kind of like spill a little bit of what he's seen. Yeah. And why he shouldn't go in there. Because they tell Chuck that like, oh, the floor is like dangerous or something. Right. Don't go, it's an attic space or whatever.
And of course, when you tell a child like
don't do it,
not to do something, that's exactly what they want to do. So there's a couple moments, where they have to stop Chuck from exploring, in the attic. But yeah, what's actually up? This is like the supernatural horror element of the film. Is when you open that door, you see. I don't know if it's like, it's not necessarily your moment of death, but you see someone's moment. It
seems to be people because we hear about maybe the Jeffries boy or something like that, and then there's another kid down the street. Clearly people that his grandfather had come into contact with, and then we later learn he sees his own wife, his grandmother, Chuck's grandmother, and then himself eventually. So I think it's always like someone that or yourself perhaps. Yeah. But we don't really get an explanation on that ever. They end up saying later that they tear the house down. I hope that room doesn't, is still not a thing. You don't really know. It's just kind of like, it's big mystery. It's just a
very haunted Trader Joe's now, I think. That's probably
don't go in the back room, stock room. Don't go in the freezer.
Yeah. So, of course, eventually, both of Chuck's grandparents die. And there's a wonderful scene where Chuck is talking with the funeral director, who's another character who Chuck has placed in his.
Oh yeah, it's one of my other favorite characters of the movie too.
Yeah, and they have this great conversation about how what a good man Mark Hamill's character is, and how he like saved his business time and time again. I think in that moment Chuck probably maybe it's overstating to say like that's when he decided to become an accountant, but like he gains like a newfound respect, I think
so
for
too.
his grandfather after his death, which is something that, of course, is a, many people have
Yeah.
that experience.
Of course. Yeah. And he's obviously, Chuck is, he's like late teenager when his grandfather passes. He's a little older and he's understanding a little bit more. But I think something that's good to point out here is that, we were talking earlier that his grandfather's a drunk and he's not really pleasant, but through this dialogue with the funeral director, you find out, he is a stand-up guy, and
Mhm.
he's helped, and he's clearly someone important to the community. And I think what is important is that probably the things that he saw in that room, in that cupola, was like what led him to just drinking all the time, trying to forget
Right.
those memories. And I can't imagine seeing that stuff. You want to like erase it. So he kind of becomes the person we know through that. Through that room, which is again sort of like the horrific part. Is you open that door, you're going to see someone die, basically, no matter what, and that's pretty scary.
Yep. So after Chuck's grandfather passes away, he's left with his envelope of personal effects, and among those items is there's a watch in there, and also the key to that locked door.
Yeah.
And
Did you make out what the watch was by the chance?
I didn't. I didn't
either.
Didn't spend a ton of time trying to figure that out. But so he goes up into that room, and he sees himself, as an adult on his deathbed, and he's able to identify that it's himself, that it's him because of a scar on his hand, which he gets the night of a school dance, which we had, just seen a few minutes before, which is also a great scene, by the way. I mean, all these scenes like individually are great. Like
they're so good. Yeah.
And so then that's the end of the movie, and like that's the moment, like he has a realization, and he kind of like, he quotes Whitman, and he kind of like makes a determination to live his life, as if he doesn't know that the end is coming.
Yeah.
Which is you could say it's sort of like a pat sort of, message, like, kind of like, Hallmark card sort of message, but like it's represented really well here. And I think pretty poignantly. I don't know, like the movie ends and I was just kind of left. I was pretty like, I was just very affected by it. Like, it, you see that it literally ends on like a shot of this empty room. And you're just left to sort of like ponder what you've seen and ask yourself like what it all kind of means. And I don't know what you really came away with it, after seeing it, these first few times, but like, to me, it's just like we were talking about before. It's just, a life is made up of these like individual moments, and you just have to kind of like, it's like treasure those like those really special moments that make life worth living. I think that's a pretty universal sentiment.
I think that's the story of this movie. Is again, he doesn't have a very special life. In many ways, he has a really hard life that he's grown up having, and I think it's just like making the most of the little things, and told in a really beautiful way. And I think we all are sort of curious to know what happens when we die, and how that what goes through our mind in those last moments. And Flanagan has explored this in other movies too. I think it's it's a beautiful sort of way to think about it. It's like a dream, when I have dreams of people that I'm like, I don't know who they are, but I probably do. I've met them at some point in my life. I'm not imagining someone that I've never seen before. It could have been someone I met when I was, 6 at a grocery store, and then they pop up in your memory. And I think that's what sort of happens, because we see him in school, and he's not even taught, that we can see by this, what's his name?
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Yeah, Chiwetel's character. He's not taught by him, but he sees him in passing, and he's clearly a teacher at his school, and he's very young, and yet he's.
There's that one moment at the dance, though, where
where
after the big dance, he has like a message of congratulations, for him, basically, a supportive message. So like,
definitely,
he's one of these people that's like a supportive, figure in his life, even if it's just that one moment, in passing, and it made an impression.
Yeah, totally. Very sweet.
Anything else you want to like discuss? When it comes to any
specific, so I had one thought when I was watching this movie. I think as we get that monologue from his grandfather about accounting, as we find out, like Chuck is just like, he's doing his math homework and he's having some trouble with a couple of questions, and really just doesn't want to do it. He's not interested. He just wants to dance. Like that's very clear at an early age. His life is just wanting to dance,
because he's really good at it. Like,
he's good. Yeah, he's like an excellent dancer.
Yeah, he's really good at it. He gets the attention of his teacher.
Yeah,
and
girls.
His classmates. Like they, he's like really respected in that room, in
Yeah.
that after school like dancing
And
club.
he's like this like kind of small, scrawny little
Yeah.
kid. He's short, and
Not a varsity athlete. This
no,
kid.
no, no, not an athlete, and just like clearly like this is kind of what makes him popular. And yeah, at a young age, it makes you feel really good to be liked. And but
And
anyways,
it connects him to his grandmother too. It's
very much so, and that's
yeah.
very important as well. But yeah, he's having this scene with his grandfather, and he's telling him about why math is important. And of course, he's an accountant, so he talks about how numbers are in everything we do in life. With working through people's accounting, he sees like the inner workings of people's lives, their vices, their goals, all of these things. And I think what interests me in that conversation is during Act 3 at the start of the movie, he's having this meeting with parents, and there's some conversations that are happening. And I just wonder if some of those things are because Chuck knows about them. For instance, I think the Pornhub mention, it's kind of odd in the beginning. You're like, that's kind of a weird thing. But then I don't really think of anything later in the movie. But after watching this a second time, I wonder, I'm like, I wonder if Chuck, he knows people's vices and like what they're spending money on. Maybe he knew that about that guy, or maybe it's just Chuck's inner thought. I don't know. And we'll never know. But I think that some of the things they mention could potentially be because Chuck knows about them because he is an accountant and he knows some of these things. But anyway, this is a thought I had watching the movie.
Yeah, no, that's a connection. Honestly, I hadn't made that specific connection, but I think that makes a lot of sense. And I love that Mark Hamill math monologue.
That's so really good. Yeah.
It's
it
really
made me
good.
almost like math.
Yeah, not quite for me. It's like it's really well. It's very convincing. Like you really, like you have an understanding of like why what kind of drives this character.
Yeah. I have to say one thing I did not like. Well, it's not that I don't like about the movie because I still really enjoy the movie. I Googled where this movie was located because I couldn't. It's like anywhere USA. You can't really tell. I didn't know if it was in California. I didn't know if it was in sort of the northeastern states, which is where a lot of Stephen King stuff
it's happens. Not in California because we know California is
it's like breaking off. So we know it's not there. We know it's not there. But like it's where like the weather looks nice. Like you just can't. I don't know. I couldn't really tell. So upon Googling, and I haven't read the book, but you find out it is in like southern Alabama. No one has an accent in this movie. So that was just shocking to me that this movie takes place in Alabama and not a one has a southern accent, which I just feel is a bit unrealistic.
So is it meant to? I know it was shot in Alabama.
It apparently it also takes place in Alabama.
It did not register with me that it.
I've got in my notes somewhere, but it's somewhere southern Alabama, which is again kind of odd, but it's also a short story of Stephen King, and maybe he deviates from his sort of normal
like northeastern kind of it doesn't what do you think of this as I assume you weren't familiar with the novella before seeing the movie, but you're a fan of Stephen King. How do you kind of like place this in King world? Like does
King world?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I think it's up there for me. Yeah, I quite like this one a lot, and probably I would say in my top 5. Yeah, adaptations for sure.
Yeah, it's a very good. Like I said, very effective. I would be curious to read the novella just to kind of like get a sense of like
how close
what went into the adaptation itself. Like, what might have been changed. But
I did buy. I bought the
collection
book with the 3 short stories in it. Yeah. Which has also got one about Mr. Harrigan's phone or something. I think that was also made into maybe a movie or a show. I haven't seen, but that one's in there.
I have to say I like King's horror stuff, but I am increasingly drawn to and return to like the non-horror pieces.
The Shawshanks or like
Shawshank.
The other Heart of Atlantis. That was a big movie when I was younger too.
The one about
Green Mile,
JFK assassination,
which
has supernatural elements, but like it's I like this register of King. Like
I do too.
It's pretty good. Well, I had asked you to come up with your top 3 Flanagan pieces. I'm curious to know if we have any like overlap.
I'm sure we do.
Do. Did you find it hard to just pick 3?
I did. Yeah. I had a hard time sort of like ordering them in sort of priority, but
There's a very clear number one for me. Like,
is it really interesting?
Yeah, we can get to that. But what's your number 3 Flanagan piece?
Number 3 is Midnight Mass for me.
Same. Midnight Mass is also my number 3. I wonder if we're exactly the same.
That would be crazy. I don't think we are, though. I don't think.
Okay. Well, Midnight Mass is the only television project I selected on the.
Okay, we're not the same
on my list. I like Midnight Mass a lot. I kind of I give an honorable mention here to Gerald's Game. I really like Gerald's Game. I feel like it's like maybe like sort of the forgotten Flanagan.
It's definitely forgotten
at this point. It's really kind of like a chamber piece and like quite strange. But it's
very evocative.
It's
wildly surprising. Like I watched that sort of. It was one of the later things I watched. I just really wasn't interested in it. Sort of knowing sort of the premise of the movie. Ended up watching it one day and was like, oh, this is like very scary.
Yeah. It's also like
very creepy.
I haven't read the novel, but apparently it's like it was always considered like the one that's like impossible to adapt like into a movie. So
okay.
I think it's like sort of like a like a big swing by Flanagan to try it. Anyway, but Midnight Mass is my actual number 3. Midnight Mass is just an incredible
and Midnight Mass, shout out, connection to this movie. Also talks about sort of what happens. There's a monologue in there about what happens when we die and sort of that process and what goes through our mind. And I don't know, maybe that's a Flanagan theme because he sort of brings that into a lot of the thing. Even in Dr. Sleep, I think there's some moments there. So maybe an overall theme of Flanagan is death and what sort of happens.
Sure. Yeah, no, he is death obsessed, I think. Like it's something that, like literally like all of his work has, incorporates sort of like like this, like these meditations on death, and so it's the subject of a lot of these monologues that these characters are known to give. Midnight Mass is my favorite of the big like mini series that that Flanagan's worked on. I suspect you have another one, maybe a couple on your list that are, I think, maybe like a little bit more popular than Midnight Mass, but I don't know, something about like when I encountered Midnight Mass. It just like worked for me like at that time. And I just remember kind of like being like very, very absorbed by it in a way that I wasn't fully absorbed by the other big Netflix miniseries that he's and the performances. Hamish Linklater is just fantastic in that series.
Though, I mean, really that is something just to call out too. We didn't talk about that too much about this movie is if you are a Flanagan fan, you're going to recognize a lot of people, including again, his wife, Kate Siegel's in this movie. Raul Coley's in this movie, plays a nurse in the Act 3 in the beginning. The dance coach is Samantha Sloyan, who
great.
In Midnight Mass is freaking crazy. Hard for me to even see her in other roles. I liked her so much in this movie, though, as
she's like so coach. Good. She just comes in like in every movie, in Midnight Mass for sure, and in this too. She comes in and she just like takes over. For when she's on the screen, she is like she's controlling.
She's great presence.
She's really great.
Yeah. And then just shout out also Carl Lumbly, who's a funeral director who is in Dr. Sleep, which is my second pick from Flanagan.
Yeah. No, Dr. Sleep's great.
What is your second pick?
My second pick is Life of Chuck. I think
Life of Chuck. Okay.
Yeah, Life of Chuck is I've seen it twice. It's like a relatively new movie. I need to probably like give it a little more time. Maybe go back and watch some of the other Flanagan stuff. But like it just really like impressed me and really affected me. So Life of Chuck is my my number 2. What's your
my number 1 is Haunting of Hill House. I'm a Hill House fan.
Hill House is good. I got nothing bad to say about Haunting of Hill House. It's very good. What is it specifically about Hill
I think I love that movie is so scary. Like there's some really scary moments in that film, and there's still just like this heartfelt message at the end, and family, how it's important. And again, he just sort of brings this like human touch and this human element to horror movies. And I really like that. I really like the storytelling in that film. I loved all the characters, and it's sort of where I became familiar with a lot of the actors he ends up using sort of later. It was my first, maybe not my first introduction to Flanagan, because I think I watched that Hush movie quite a while ago, which I do like a lot too.
Hush
but it was certainly sort of where I like the world of Flanagan, I felt like kind of started. And it's a great, I watch it every October. Yeah, it's just a good sort of Halloween show.
Yeah. No, very good choice. My number 1 is Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep,
I think it's like specifically the director's cut of Dr. Sleep.
That's the only way to watch it now.
Yeah, it's just great. I think the reason I like it so much is like the degree of difficulty to pull that off and the way
Make
he
a sequel of one of
it's
the
just like
best
off the
horror movies
charts.
ever.
Yeah, to connect it to both the it's a sequel to the novel. It's an adaptation of the novel, which is a sequel, but it also connects to the movie,
which is very different,
and which Stephen King famously hates.
Yeah,
and it somehow is able to please fans of all of these
and
things.
please Stephen King, because he was a part of this movie, and it has since like really connected with Flanagan. And I'll make mention that I did see a peep of what Flanagan's working on, which is Carrie, and that'll be really exciting. Very, very interested to hear his take on that. And I think some Exorcist project or something like that too.
Yeah, he's doing Carrie for Amazon MGM, I think, and he's also got the TV rights to the Dark Tower series.
Oh, does he? Okay.
So, yeah, and he's apparently doing a DCU movie. He's doing Clayface. So he's going to be.
I'm not familiar with Clayface.
Yeah, doing a comic book adaptation. So
oof, I hope that worries me a little bit.
I trust Flanagan, but yeah, no, I love Dr. Sleep. It's great Ewan McGregor performance, great Rebecca Ferguson performance.
Yeah,
incredibly evocative. Just a great movie. If you have the director's cut to just kind of like watching like a snowy afternoon or something, it's really
so good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Hey, we did it. Life of Chuck, time on screen. Look at that. Top 3 Flanagan projects. This has been really fun, Kat. Thank you for joining me for Life of Chuck, time on screen.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think this will probably be like one of my favorite movies of the year. I'd be surprised if this was not like a top 5 favorite movie of the year.
Yeah, it's very touching. It's very heartwarming. I mean, just talking about it today, it's been maybe almost a week since I watched it, and kind of want to watch it again.
Yeah. I can see why people might not like it. Like I can see why people might criticize it as being like a little saccharine or a little, I don't know. I get it.
Yeah.
If you like sort of like Flanagan's emotional register, I think that, this is a movie that's worth checking out.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
All right. Well, thank you again, Kat, and thank you to everyone for listening in for another episode of Time on Screen. We'll be back soon with a new episode. Until then, take care.